Hello everyone, welcome to the Departamento Loratorum. My name is Max, and today I'd like to talk to you about orcs. The orcs are one of the most widespread and warlike races in the Warhammer universe, and can be found living and fighting all across the galaxy, even on planets that most other races would consider borderline uninhabitable. In fact, they can not only survive in some of the most inhospitable conditions the galaxy has to offer, but they can thrive. And while other races, like humans and Votann, also inhabit otherwise desolate worlds, they do so mostly because of the presence of valuable resources, and will often use advanced technology to try and make the place habitable. Orcs, meanwhile, can build a prosperous, by their standards, community in even the most barren, barely hospitable location. To understand how this is possible, we need to examine orc biology. Orcs are a warlike, green-skinned race of humanoids. They fight constantly, among themselves and other races, and grow constantly throughout their lives as they fight and win. Orcs have a biological need for conflict, and will only stop fighting if they are killed. Orc DNA is a mixture of the fungal and the animal, living in harmony. Orcs also have a lower density of nerve endings, simple organs made incredibly resilient by their fungal components, and thick, tough skin and bones. All of this makes orcs incredibly strong and resilient, able to survive wounds that would instantly kill a human, including decapitation, provided their head is reattached quickly enough. Some orcs will augment their strength by getting weapons, cybernetic limbs, or armor permanently attached to their bodies. An orc's strength naturally lends itself to melee combat, in which they excel. They are, as a rule, poor shots however, rarely taking the time to aim. They overcome this deficiency by filling the air with bullets, which they call dakka, and of course there is never enough dakka. Orcs also have knowledge encoded directly into their DNA, providing them with innate understanding of how to fight, speak, and function in orc society. Some orcish subgroups also have additional knowledge encoded into their genetic makeup, although we will discuss them more later. The average orc is a fairly simple creature, with their normal response to a problem being to run up to the offending object or person and smash it until it stops bothering them. However, you would be a fool to assume that all orcs are this simple. Many of them possess innate cunning, and some are skilled in tactics or strategy. Underestimate an orc at your peril. Orcs do not have separate genders, and because of this, they mostly do not understand human sex and gender, with terms like boys just being their word for a group of orcs. In the book Ghazghkull Thraka, Prophet of the Waaagh, Makari even refers to Ghazghkull as they before being corrected by some humans. Most other lore does have orcs refer to themselves or others refer to them with male pronouns, presumably because the term orc boys is already trademarked. All orcs have innate psychic ability, with a large group of orcs generating a psychic field called Waaagh energy, and, if a critical mass of orcs are drawn together under the control of a powerful leader, this may drive them to undertake a combo of a crusade and mobile bar fight called a Waaagh, traveling the galaxy via space hulks or ships the orcs construct, conquering or destroying planets, fighting everyone in their way, until they are defeated, or until they run out of enemies to fight and the Waaagh collapses in on itself. The Waaagh energy can additionally be harnessed into psychic powers by orc psychers, and used by the orcs to influence reality if a large enough number of them believe in something. A good example of this is the orc belief that red ones go faster, causing them to paint their vehicles red in order to increase their speed. However, it may also be that the orcs instinctively paint vehicles they know are fast red, making this a self-fulfilling prophecy. While Waaagh energy may help orc tech function more efficiently, it is not going to make a stick shoot bullets, say. Orc technology still has to be at least somewhat functional. It's not totally powered by their belief. Despite this shared psychic energy, the orcs don't have anything like the Tyranid hive mind, and are individuals. They have their own beliefs, likes, and dislikes, and their own friends, or favorite enemies. They also have their own gods, Gork, who is brutal but cunning, and Mork, who is cunning but brutal. All orcs do share a love of war, however, and their lives are focused on fighting and winning. A common orc saying is that they can never be defeated in battle. If they win, they win. If they die fighting, it doesn't count because they still had fun anyway. And if they run away, well, they just get to come back and fight some more another day. As we can see, orcs are essentially the perfect warrior life form in the Warhammer 40k universe. This perfection is not naturally occurring, however, and the orcs are in fact a genetically engineered warrior race. We have two possible origins of the species. The first is the one that the orcs themselves tell. Although orcs are not great historians and are rarely concerned with any events from the past that don't involve huge battles or tales of who smashed whose face in, they do tell that their race was created by a group called the Brain Boys, an orcish subspecies who became intelligent through eating a particular mushroom that grew only on an unknown home planet and spread throughout the galaxy. However, the orcs, slaves to the Brain Boys, ended up eating all the mushrooms, causing the Brain Boys to lose their intelligence and become the Snotlings. Another theory is that they are descended from the Krork, a giant warrior race created to fight alongside the Eldar by the Old Ones in the War in Heaven against the Necrons. The Old Ones were eventually defeated, but the Krork survived and evolved into the Orcs. This appears to be the origin story that GW is favoring now, but we all know 40k lore is ever-evolving, and they may choose to go in a different direction in the future. But whatever their origin, Orcs as they currently exist are one of the most dangerous races in the galaxy, and not just due to their aforementioned strength and endurance, but due to their means of reproduction and the ecosystem that literally grows up around them. Orcs do not reproduce sexually, but through spores. These spores are released throughout their lives, with an especially large number released upon their death, unless the orc's body is burned or otherwise destroyed shortly after their demise. These spores are then spread by the wind and take root, creating not just more orcs, but a whole ecosystem that exists to support them and ensure that they are able to wage war wherever they go in the galaxy. First, we have the Orkoid fungus. There are multiple different types of fungus that grow up around the orcs, from edible, medicinal, poisonous. Some can even be brewed into a beer for the orcs to drink. They serve as the bedrock of the orcish ecosystem, providing food for the orcs and other life forms. Next are squigs, short for squiggly beast, and they are the equivalent to orcish animals. They come in multiple different shapes and sizes, from relatively small attack squigs and eating squigs to massive beasts of war like the squigga. There are even hair squigs, parasites that orcs will put on their heads to give the appearance of hair. Squigs survive off of orc refuse, fungus, and sometimes local plants and animals, and in turn, they provide the orcs with food and resources. The squigs themselves are tended to by the first sentient group of orcoids, the snotlings. Snotlings look like a smaller Gretchen, although they lack a Gretchen's intelligence or cunning, being fairly dim-witted and also fairly passive and non-violent for an orcish subspecies. While they can be given crude weapons and pointed towards the enemy, they're not very effective in straight-up combat, and are more useful to the orcs as living ammo to be shot through the warp at enemies by a shock attack gun, as they're too stupid to know to run away from an orc holding it. Snotlings also have an innate understanding of how to care for the fungus and squigs, with the squigs eating fewer of them than they would any other orcish race. The next group up the boss pole, so to speak, are the Gretchen, or Grots, small, goblin-like creatures. Grots are the slave caste of the orcs, performing the manual labor that keeps orc society running while being kicked around by their masters. They are generally cunning and cowardly, but can also be very cruel to any creatures smaller and weaker than themselves, taking out their frustrations at their general mistreatment. The orcs will make use of the Gretchen in combat, driving them towards the enemy to soak up bullets meant for the orcs, clear minefields, or tie down an enemy in a wave of tiny green bodies. They may also be used to operate artillery in the form of mech guns, and a few lucky Grots will be sealed in a mech called a Kill-A-Can, granting them increased strength and killiness, which they will almost immediately use to take revenge on their bullies. But even being turned into a Kill-A-Can cannot remove a Grot's innate cowardice. A normal Gretchen's life is grueling work and constant abuse by the orcs. Despite this mistreatment, most Grots are content with their life, with the orcs at least providing some form of protection from other threats, and the Grots not really knowing any other way of life. As seen through Makari's point of view in Gazkul Thraka, Prophet of the Waaagh, some Grots see this as the natural way of the world, as ordained by Gork and Mork. The presence of rebel Grots and the Red Gobbo, first introduced in the Gorka Morka spin-off game, who seek to end orcish oppression, shows that this is not universal, however. Sitting as the apex lifeform atop this ecosystem are the orcs themselves, extracting resources from it, and in return providing protection, at least until they find it funnier to start killing. Orcs, and presumably all the other orcoid lifeforms, grow in a plant-like cocoon underground or in dark corners of a spaceship, as orcs can survive and often be found on space hulks. Once the orc is fully developed, they will dig their way out, appearing as a slightly smaller and lighter green orc called a youth. These orcs, as shown again in Gorka Morka, are instinctively drawn to nearby orc settlements. If they survive the elements, hungry squigs, and local predators, or alien inhabitants, then they will make it to civilization. Orc settlements are often a rough and wild place. Even during times of relative peace, there will be brawls and low-scale raids and conflict with other orc tribes or alien inhabitants. The settlement itself is often made out of scrap from these conflicts, or sometimes something like a ruined city or crashed spaceship. Grots will do most of the day-to-day work of keeping a settlement functioning, with the average orc spending their time doing as they please. When orcs do need to barter for food, better weapons, cool vehicles, medical treatment, and the like, they use their teeth. Orc teeth naturally fall out, decay, and are replaced during their lifetime, providing each orc with a basic level of income and preventing hoarding. And if you need more teeth, just knock a smaller orc over the head and take his. Simple. Due to their encoded genetic knowledge, they have a basic innate understanding of what needs to be done to keep society functioning. Some orcs, called odd boys, have additional genetic information encoded to fill specialty roles. These include, but are not limited to, mech boys, orc mechanics who maintain and invent new orc technologies, such as weapons, vehicles, armor, etc. Pain Boys, orc doctors who heal any injuries, fit cyborg prosthetics, and do whatever other insane surgeries they think their patient might need, like the dreaded squig brain transplant. Runt herds, orc slave masters who possess the rare trait of patience needed to train grots, snotlings, and other alien races to perform menial labor. They can also act as squig breeders and storytellers if needed. Weird Boys, orc psychers born with the innate ability to harness and discharge Waaagh energy as psychic powers, with the small side effect of the occasional exploding head. As stated previously, orcs grow all throughout their lives, and fighting and winning causes them to grow faster. Older orcs are a darker shade of green than younger ones, and accumulate scars from their many battles, with veterans often being called Scar Boys. Orc hierarchy is simple. The biggest orc is the boss. Large orcs, called knobs, lead mobs of smaller boys, bossing them around and taking the best loot for themselves, of course. The leader of a grouping of orcs, called a tribe, is a war boss, and he is the biggest orc around, with the knobs acting as his lieutenants and enforcers. Orcs who lead multiple tribes, usually on a Waaagh or as part of an orc empire, may be called a warlord, or another suitably dramatic title, like arch-arsonist or overfiend. Any orc can challenge their leader for their position, though these contests are often fatal for the loser. A war boss needs to be constantly asserting himself over his knobs, lest they start thinking they would make a better boss. Orcs can also be divided into larger groupings, called clans, which are orcs with a similar philosophy on life and war. An orc is normally born into his clan, although they can leave and change clans if they do feel like they have to. The clans are the Goths, Evil Sons, Deaf Skulls, Blood Axes, Snakebites, and Bad Moons. These clans can also have biological differences, with Goths being larger and stronger and Bad Moons growing teeth quicker, or psychological differences, with Evil Sons being obsessed with speed and Death Skulls being obsessed with larceny. Orcs may also choose to leave or be cast out of their clan or tribe, roving the galaxy as pirate groups called freebooters. As we can see, the orc ecosystem provides everything the orcs need, from food to materials to slaves. Orcs can not only survive, but thrive in almost any corner of the galaxy. As long as a single orc or fungus survives, the cycle can restart. This leads to orcs being present all throughout the galaxy, from small, isolated tribes to sector-wide empires. Even the most isolated, primitive orcs can still pose a threat due to their violence and strength. Orc tribes who have yet to develop, discover, or be introduced to wider orc culture by more technologically advanced orcs are called feral orcs. They can be anywhere from the Stone Age to pre-industrial age, and pose just as much of a threat as their more technologically advanced brethren. Once a world has been infested with orcs, it's almost impossible to cleanse. As orcs are so widespread, you can use them in pretty much any campaign or any setting you want, with no need to justify how they got there. They're orcs. It's just what they do. If you'd like to learn more, some books I'd recommend are Imperial Glory, which actually has a chapter from the perspective of a feral orc on a planet. Ghazghkull Thraka, Prophet of the Waaagh, is also an excellent book looking at Ghazghkull's rise to power as well as life on his home planet. And of course you can also check out the Orc Codices, many of which have wonderful lore blurbs. On a personal level too, I'd also just like to say that I do love Orc lore. While I'd say I'm more of a Chaos player and fan than anything else, I think that Orc lore is some of the most consistently good lore in 40k. Even some of the weirder bits just fit so well. It's like it doesn't really have to make sense, it's just perfectly orky, and sometimes even works better if it doesn't. I've never met a 40k fan who does not love orcs. They're just such a delightful part of the setting, and I feel like they make it better just by their existence. I hope you found this informative. Please leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and comment any suggestions for future videos down below. Thank you, and have a great day. Bye!